Okay, we're going to call the,
We can't though, because
we'll call the April 3rd regular meeting of the Zoning Commission to order. We have a full set of commissioners tonight, so there's no need to appoint alternates. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the March 20th meeting. I have one comment. Page 2, line 26, capital is misspelled.
There's more in that one.
More in that line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, which page was it, 26?
26 was the
I
second.
know, I didn't realize there was more than one. Okay, 20 line 26. All right, I don't think Jimmy commended the company. Did he commend them for bringing
Yeah,
this? Bringing
yeah, there was
okay.
one fellow who
Okay.
did that.
But then why did he bring up the ethics?
Because he was saying that
Oh, the expert of
engineers.
the engineers. Okay,
Right,
okay,
right.
I misread that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, any other comments or corrections?
Mr. Chair, it sounds like your mics are working, so just move them a little closer to you. We'll all hear. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, may I have a motion to approve as amended?
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
second that.
Second by Diane. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't
carries
here.
5-0 with one abstention. And this is abstaining. Okay, the next order of business is continuation of the public hearing on application ZC 2303 of Vessel Holdings. We're going to ask the applicant if there's anything they want to add or change in their application, and then we'll give the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions, and then the public will be allowed to comment. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Peter Alter. I'm a lawyer. I practice law in Glastonbury at the firm of Alter and Pearson. We have just a few items to bring you up to date on this evening. As of tonight, the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency has not acted on our application, so you continue to be in awaiting configuration until they have acted. And as a result of that, I would ask you to leave the public hearing open this evening in order to receive their action. If they take it tomorrow night, we would be back at your meeting on April 17th, assuming they take action tomorrow. To bring you up to date, we have filed a revised site plan and other documentation in response to some concerns expressed by the Inland Wetlands Agency. We have added a 3-foot fence on top of the retaining wall on the northerly boundary of the property in order to shield the upland review area and the wetlands below it from headlight glare. And that's been added to the plans that are on file. At the request of the chairman of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, our landscape architect substituted certain native species for some plantings that she felt were not representative of native plantings, and we have completed that and filed a revised plan in that regard. At the request of a commissioner, we have relocated the dumpster that was formerly along the northerly property. It is now out of the upland review area and on the southern parking lot area. We also, I don't remember whether we talked about this at the last meeting or not, but we have made the dumpster bear-proof at the request of the Inland Wetlands Agency as well. And our site engineer has refined some of the snow storage areas at the request of the town engineer, as well as the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, to avoid creating any conflicts between the drainage areas that exist on the site, as well as snow storage areas. There had been some discussions, Mr. Chairman, regarding the adequacy of parking spaces on the site. I went back to Mark Vertucci, our project traffic engineer, Fuss & O'Neill, and asked him to provide a written summary of his expert testimony with respect to the adequacy of parking. I did submit an electronic copy to Mr. McGregor, but I'll also give him a hard copy. Mr. Vertucci's conclusion, I won't read his 3-page letter to you as part of the record, but his conclusion is that based on his review of Connecticut state standard parking rates, industry standard ITE parking generation rates, and actual observed parking rates at similar residential developments in the Hartford area, it is the professional opinion of Fuss & O'Neill that the parking supply of 94 spaces serving the proposed 80 units at 446 Hot Meadow Street is more than adequate to accommodate the proposed 80-unit residential development with 83 bedrooms. And Mr. Vertucci also attached a study done by another traffic engineer from the firm of F.A. Hesketh and Sons, which collaborates and confirms Mr. Vertucci's comments as well with respect to the need for parking. It's my understanding that our project engineer and your town engineer have now come to an agreement on the items that had been outstanding at the time of our last meeting, with some revisions to stormwater management as requested by your town engineer. There had been one outstanding item, but it's my understanding that it's been resolved satisfactorily to both parties. And that really concludes my update, except that I did want to say, again, that we are not aware of any public health or public safety issues that have come up as this public hearing process has moved along. If commissioners have questions or concerns, please let us know. Josh Levy is here along with me to respond to any questions that commissioners may have or that are raised by additional public hearing, public comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Yes.
Yes, Jackie.
So, comment to the application. There are 24 affordable units proposed with 56 market rate apartment units proposed. I think we need to evaluate if we are potentially hurting 53 or so Hazel Meadow neighboring properties. They are existing and they are naturally occurring affordable housing for Simsbury. These are homes that have historically sold between 200 and 250,000. They are the entry-level housing that we want in Simsbury, and I think we need to consider that.
Okay. Melissa?
So, I've learned a lot about 830G in the course of this application, and I certainly wasn't an expert in it before, and I wouldn't call myself an expert now, but I've learned a lot. And it really helped me to really understand the breadth of the housing that we have that falls in the affordable range here in Simsbury already. And, you know, I looked at the multifamily developments we have. We have Eli Place with 38 units, Hoskins Crossing with 81 units, Kings Ridge with 24 units, Aspen Green has 181 units, 20 of which are deed restricted. Canal Place has 84 units. They're renting at $1,200 for a 2-bedroom with a full basement. It's not deed restricted, it's just in the affordable range, as are Eli Place and Hoskins Crossing, and I believe Kings Ridge. The Meadows, they have 2 stories, 120 units. Meadowview has 38 units, certainly in the affordable range. Sycamore Garden has 2-story, 40 units in the affordable range. Woolkit Woods has 2-bedroom apartments renting out at $1,025 for 2-bedroom. The Canal Place, the 84 units at $1,200, it's not just 2 bedrooms, it's 2 bedrooms with a full basement. All of those are really in the affordable range. Then we have our municipal housing authority properties of Owen Murphy, the Virginia Connolly properties, the Farms, and certainly, the owned properties around, like Hazel Meadow 1, which has 22 units, and Hazel Meadow 2, which has 53 homes. And I certainly haven't seen this parking engineering report that we're just being told about now, so I can't analyze it, and I can't, make a determination regarding what similar units or similar developments they're comparing this project to. But I do know that we didn't learn until last time that they had been using a code for their parking that implies that the bike path could be considered a valid method of ingress and egress. So I really do want to delve into that engineering report when I see it. But I just come back to what 830G requires. 830G is a remedial statute to fix a problem about affordable housing. And affordable housing itself is not defined within Chapter 126A, which is 830G. It defines affordable housing developments, and it defines assisted housing, but it doesn't define the term affordable housing. And when you're looking at what our burden is as a board, we're required to grant zoning applications or applications to change our zoning regulations under certain circumstances. And we're only really allowed to take into account things like public health, safety, and there's this random other legal considerations which is not actually defined anywhere, so I'm not clear about what that means. But, we have to make a determination if we're not satisfied with what's before us, that even if those public interests do exist, they have to clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, which brings me back to all the housing that falls in the affordable range that I've just listed here. And it makes me wonder, it doesn't say in 830G that the public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing developments or for assisted housing. It just says affordable housing, which isn't actually defined in 830G. So I looked that up, and it's defined elsewhere in that section 8. And affordable housing is defined in section 8-39A as housing for which persons and families pay 30% or less of their annual income, where such income is less than or equal to the area median income for the municipality in which such housing is located, as is determined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So our obligation is to make sure that health, safety, or other matters clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, which is the definition I just talked about. It is not the deed-restricted housing requirements for a set-aside development, but rather income or rents or housing costs for somebody who is less than or equal to the area median income. Now, I happen to know that the area median income for a family of 4 in our region is $112,000, which means that a single person, it's about $75,000. And so when you do the math, that comes out to something that's around $2,000 a month. And we're not required to weigh public health and safety against affordable housing that qualifies under 830G for the 10%. We're just required to weigh it against affordable housing needs. And, you know, we have a lot of units, houses. I mean, there are tons more that I didn't talk about here. These are just ones that I can think of off the top of my head. And so I'm wondering, I'm sorry, Attorney, I've forgotten your last name.
Alter.
Attorney Alter, thank you very much. I'm wondering, Attorney Alter, whether your client has taken into consideration, you know, if you come to a town to develop here, I'm assuming that you've taken a look around our town and you've taken a look at the existing affordable housing that we have, regardless whether it qualifies under 830G. We have a lot of affordable housing. And I'm wondering if that's been taken into consideration in the application you have here before us today.
So I'd respond in two ways. First of all, I would respectfully disagree with your conclusion as to what is affordable housing with respect to Connecticut general statutes.
I do have the statute in front of me, Attorney Alter.
I've read it.
Okay. It doesn't say housing, it doesn't say affordable housing.
I understand that,
development.
except
Okay,
that under-
wait a minute, let's stop here for a minute. We don't need a debate on the laws. I think your point is that there is a consideration that we have to take into account when we make our decision. And I don't think we need to fight with them over whether our assessment of things.
I think it's not just what we need to take into consideration, but what the applicant needs to take into consideration when they're bringing an application before us.
Well, they've brought it forward, so anyway,
Thank you very much.
thank you for your,
Thank you.
If I, Mr. Chairman, if I just might make two very brief comments.
Yes.
According to the State of Connecticut Department of Housing, Simsbury has housing that qualifies according to DOH as affordable housing at a level of about 4.8%. Statutory provision is for 10%. That's part of our materials. The second part of that I think is more important is that of all of the developments that Ms. Osborne commented on, as far as I know, there are very few of those that are deed restricted, so that one of the important provisions of 830G is to protect the affordable housing that is created for a minimum of 40 years. And in answer to her question, did the applicant take all that into consideration? The answer is yes, it did.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments by the commissioners?
Sure, I'm gonna just stick my neck right out there and say, that it's not a perfect project, but I don't think the siting of this project is horrible. And there is a need for affordable housing in Simsbury. A single person has a hard time finding something affordable around here, and a lot of single people I know don't make $75,000. That being said, I do have some concerns about the project, and parking is absolutely one of them. And if I am that unfortunate person that works later than everybody else in the apartment complex, how do I know I'm gonna have a parking place when I come home? Are you assigning parking spots? Are you letting people know in their rent agreement that they can't have multiple cars? I mean, I'm still stuck on that. I mean,
I'll
what's a
ask-
person to do
not-
if they
I'll ask-
have a late shift?
I'll ask Mr. Levy to speak in a moment, but on a very fundamental level, this is a financial investment for this developer. And the worst thing that a developer can do is have a project where people have no longevity. So that if there is a parking problem that arises, it is the developer who takes the punishment for that, the financial punishment, because people won't stay there if they rent, or they won't rent there if they're not satisfied. So that while your concern is certainly understandable, the developer has a much greater stake in creating a property where its tenants will stay, renew their leases year after year, and continue to be appropriate tenants for a development. So if you think that you're taking a risk by believing our experts, imagine the risk of the developer who's going to spend millions of dollars on the same reliance. I don't know if Josh, you want to say anything or not?
I mean, there's not another place to park right now. And so I appreciate that you would work that out, but that's a problem for me. I'll just keep going. We did have somebody in the public say, why not 20 units instead of 80? I think that probably isn't economically feasible. I'm not a builder or developer. But why not 60 instead of 80? Why not 3 floors instead of 4? You're alleviating a parking issue then. You're possibly addressing some concerns of your immediate neighbors. Density issues. I think the property becomes a lot more workable that way. It's something I would strongly recommend. And then finally, we do have an issue with the bike path being not exactly what we had in mind. I mean, you're on a major thoroughfare, you're within a very close distance to commercial and the Powder Forest. I would love to see a sidewalk incorporated into your site plan. And the town has spent a lot of money pulling sidewalks south to a very close distance within your site. Certainly a sidewalk and a possible proposal with the town to connect it to what we have would address some concerns, would provide safe pedestrian connection with the town with possible bus stops. And I think that would really enhance a project that still needs some work. But like I said, isn't horrible to me.
So those are really good comments, and I'll respond to a couple of them. In an earlier discussion, and I think it was before the commission, or maybe it was just with Mr. McGregor, he asked us about sidewalks along our frontage. We had already indicated we were willing to grant the town an easement if it had to locate a sidewalk on private property. We don't have any great objection to building a sidewalk along our frontage. The challenge on this site is that immediately north of this property, Second Brook comes under Hop Meadow, and there's quite a change in elevation there that would require some substantial engineering and development by the town to get across that. I also, not from Simsbury, but I certainly have taken note of the fact that there's sidewalk construction on the west side of Hop Meadow now going on, not the east side. Could we
Cross.
Certainly, and it certainly is possible to create a crosswalk. We have a signalized intersection where a crosswalk could be created, certainly. So we're not fundamentally opposed to that. In fact, we support it and have indicated that to Mr. McGregor. We're interested in the suggestion of a lesser number of units. It's not something that we haven't considered. We're obliged by the public hearing process before the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency and the chairman asked us to bring to them tomorrow night a reasonable and prudent alternative, and one of those is a lesser number of units, the possibility of that. George, I don't know if you could put up the site plan that you had up before. We have an issue with that I'll make you aware of. For the Inland Wetlands Agency, their motivation is to get us away from the upland review area. And if you look at the site plan, you'll see a dotted line that runs in sort of two arcs through the parking lot. That line is the 100 feet distance from the wetland boundary, which is not on our property, is about 53 feet at its closest point to our property line. If we reduced the number of units and the building got smaller, what the Inland Wetlands Agency would expect us to do is to eliminate parking spaces in the upland review area. And that would run counter to your comment that you want more parking. The compromise might be to leave some parking spaces in the edges. We have like a half a dozen spaces that are partially in and, partially out of the upland review area. If we reduce the number of units but don't reduce the number of parking spaces proportionately, we can provide more parking than we have now relative to the number of units.
Would it have anything to do with the parking being permeable or non-permeable? I mean, would that, so, the parking over in that area could possibly be paver parking or something?
Could be. We have already called out
Some options.
permeable pavers where the fire marshal asked us to provide entry to the bike path. So we could certainly offer that to preserve some of the spaces within the upland review area. When we moved the dumpster to the southerly part of the property at their request, we created 4 more spaces up in the upland review area, sort of directly north of where the dumpster is now. If we go to a lesser number of units, we will have to convince the Inland Wetland Agency that your concern about parking is more important than their concern about the upland review area. We already have provided testimony to them that none of this development has any impact on the wetland. We're 120 feet from Second Brook at our nearest point. All of our drainage is self-contained, so we really don't have any impact on the brook, but they're concerned about protecting the upland review area. So that's something we would certainly consider presenting to you if Inland Wetlands is satisfied with that as a prudent, feasible alternative. But so we should be pretty blunt at this point in this public hearing process. We don't have a great sense that this commission is particularly enamored with this development, and it would be helpful to know that if we came back with a plan that was satisfactory to the Inland Wetlands Agency, that would address some of the concerns that some of the commissioners have. I don't think we can address all of the concerns for all the commissioners, but I think we can address a substantial number of those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you finished?
Yeah, I would have the same concerns. Is there any possibility that you looked at for additional property in this area?
Well, we can't go north, because that's.
Yeah, that one, that's obvious.
We're not going there. There is that property to the south that is a house that has no roof. I don't know if you've seen that. There's a house that's in pretty desperate condition. It's owned in an estate. Apparently there's a great deal of difficulty figuring out actually who owns it and has control of it. And those are the only two. Obviously, we're not going east. We're not going across the bike path to the other 2 point whatever acres on the other side. That's to remain as it is. So.
But the property without the roof, behind that, isn't there another property there?
We're not contiguous to that. there's a homeowner who spoke against this project, who I think is south of the building. But otherwise, we don't have any other contiguous properties.
Okay. Yeah, but I would reiterate that, you know, I think the little bit of, even if we had the sidewalks in front of your property so that eventually it would link to something else, because, you know, we did hear from, you know, Mr. Mitchell, for example, that, you know, his people, it would work for his employees, but, you know, we need to get them safely down the street. So that's to the south, not necessarily to the center, but down the street.
And we have no objection.
Okay.
Ann?
I guess I would basically reiterate and agree with the comments of my other commissioners right here. My basic concern really is parking. And I think if you're not from this area, if you are from New York City or New Jersey or Boston, you know, you're used to being able to go get a bus or, you know, take the subway or whatever. Whereas here you really can't. You can't, if you have a couple living in a house, in an apartment, one teaches school in Tarryville and the other person, I don't know, is working in a nursing home in, say, Kensington. There are on different schedules, different times. There is no other way to get to work except by cars. So my guess is majority of people, regardless of what your experts and the surveys say, in this particular area, which is the Hartford area, but it is not the city of Hartford, nor is it the city of West Hartford, that we are rural suburbia, or suburban rural, whatever you want to call it. But there is no way to get from A to B in a two families without two cars. And that's whether you live in a McMansion or whether you live in affordable housing. And I do think that really has to be taken into consideration for the people who are going to be living there. Unless you're getting one person living in the apartment, fine. But if you're getting a couple or two guys or two girls or whatever, they're going to be a two-car family. In that area, you can't even buy groceries without a car. I mean, it's a pretty long hike from where you are just to even get to Fitzgerald's, not less to get to Stop and Shop. And I think that, that needs to be considered, and I think that's where a lot of us are coming from in thinking about the people who will be living there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Bruce?
Dave, I want to wait until I have the report that we're waiting, that was just delivered on, is it parking or something? And we get also to see what inland wetlands decides. So we're going to have another chance to.
We're going to have to stay open, keep the public hearing, so.
Attorney Alters is not going to miss a chance to get up and talk some more. So I'd be happy
Absolutely
to
not.
raise some questions at a later time.
Diane?
Well, I'm always at the end here, so usually everybody's already addressed and mentioned my comments, so I'm not going to belabor it. My concerns are parking and traffic. And I do think that both of those seem unrealistic to me. I know that there's studies. I am curious, though, I'll have two questions. Can you tell me how much bike storage, again, there is? I know you have a couple of bike units, but how many storage, whatever you want to call it, how many bikes can you accommodate on the property? I know you have some bike racks.
Right now, our site plan engineers show one bike rack.
And how many bikes is that?
If I were going to look at the plan, it looks like about 10 bikes to me. But we have room to add as many bike racks as we need.
Would be that, I mean, again, I'm really counting the parking spaces, so would that be at the, would that be taking out parking areas to put in
No.
bike, or where would you?
If
put
you,
in additional
if you
bike
look at the
storage?
site plan, George can give me the pointer. The bike rack we're showing now is here. So we obviously have room for a duplicate right next to it that is not related to the parking. It's on the other side of the sidewalk that's been created to lead to the trail. So we have room there. We also would have room in the other area beyond the front door in this area if there were really that many bicyclists who needed places to store their bikes.
All right, so it's February, and I don't want to keep my bike outside, but I'm still ambitious enough to actually ride my bike. Are there any storage units or any place where I can put my equipment?
We've discussed that internally, and it is possible to create, we do not show it on the plan right now, but it is possible to create a storage unit inside for those kinds of pieces of equipment. So the answer is yes.
Okay. And then, okay, I sort of know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have other built units, like actually units that are currently built that have a similar setup as ours? In other words, suburban, do not have access to sidewalks, do not have ready access to, bus lines, et cetera, that are successful, and how's the parking been going there?
The answer is no. We don't have any, so I can't represent to you that there are any are successful. I come from Glastonbury, not New Jersey or New York or Boston, and our experience in Glastonbury with multifamily parking is that Glastonbury regulation overparks. We've built a 250-unit complex. It's called the Tannery. Number of studio apartments, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments. Per the regulation in Glastonbury, we have about 275 or 280 parking spaces. Place is absolutely full of residents, has no vacancies to speak of. And there are 175 cars registered to park on the premises. So we have way too much blacktop. It could have been green space. It's not. It's paved and it stands empty. I understand the concerns about parking, and I don't expect you to believe anybody. You don't have to, except that as developers with experience, this developer is confident that he has enough parking. I understand you don't believe him, and that's okay. You don't have any evidence to the contrary. You only have your gut instinct that says it's not enough, and I fully understand that as well.
Well, I'll just say, at the moment, I find myself having both of my grown children back at home with me, and so we have four cars always, and we frequently have 6 cars when the boyfriends and girlfriends are visiting, and depending on what else is going on. So I already feel like I've got a car lot out front of my own house, and I live in Terriffill, so it's not like I've got a ton of room. So I just cannot imagine it.
These are 77 1-bedroom apartments, 3 2-bedroom apartments, 83 bedrooms altogether. And our experience is that you actually end up with less than 1 car on the average per unit. That's our experience, and I don't anticipate that you will.
You can't live here without a car.
Right,
Can't do it here.
okay.
Sure.
Thanks.
Tucker.
I'm very glad to hear that you're considering more bike racks. How much exhaust does a bike, in your experience, cause? How much exhaust, sir? I don't think it usually causes any. How much light pollution does a bicycle cause? None, mostly. Do bike racks cause flooding? Typically, no. What does cause flooding and what does cause pollution is large parking spaces, which you have done, it seems like a great deal of research, tried to reduce the size of in your case here. We're also not far in this location from what is admittedly not amazing mass transit, but from a bus line. And you're a short bike ride away from a lot of businesses in town. I'd just like people to consider that while just because the car has been the way we've done things for the last 60 years does not mean that it has to be the way we always do things forever and ever. I have my own issues, especially with some of the traffic concerns on Hot Meadow, but I wanted to ask if you had any, where you see possible improvements to the bike infrastructure around here, or the cycling infrastructure, like your racks, for instance, or indoor storage areas.
It's driven by demand. If there's demand, we'll satisfy it. I will mention one other thing, which for my generation is just a complete mystery. People under 30, that might be you, I don't know, everybody under 30, they don't even own cars. They just call Uber, or they call whatever the other things are, and they travel that way all the time.
There's almost no Uber around here. It doesn't exist.
If there's a demand, there will
Okay,
be.
but we're dealing with an application here. We're way off into the hinterlands. And in order for us to pass on this application, we have to identify documentable reasons why there's a public safety threat or a public health threat. And so I appreciate the commission's concerns, but we do need to focus on things that we can identify as documentable, provable facts in order to succeed in our decision on the application. Anybody has any more questions? I'll open it up to the public.
Thank you.
Okay, we invite people to come up and give their opinions or their comments on the application. And remember to state your name and your address. And please cite support for your contention of public safety threat, okay? That would help us be, we can't make decisions on you don't like it kind of comments. So anybody want to speak, please? Let me know. Raise your hand. I don't think she's leaving. I think she's coming up.
Hi, my name is Kelly Rothfuss. I'm at 14 Nutmeg Court.
Excuse me, what?
Kelly Rothfuss
Okay.
at 14 Nutmeg Court. So the issue that keeps getting brought up is, once again, public health and public safety. We have talked several times that this construction is a public safety issue, particularly the safety and health of me and my family and the sanctity of my home, the home of Doug, the home of Debbie, the home of Brenda, the home of many of our other residents who are abutted to this construction. And I will get to my favorite topic, which is water. Okay, so we've talked a lot about these water cisterns. Original plan was for 1, now it's up to 4. Which is, okay, good, so they're addressing the concern about water runoff and things of that nature. There's still a concern about when we ask questions about maintenance. There's slippery answers about who is maintaining this. Oh, some guys, maybe somebody who lives there. I have issues with that because the CEO of this company has a dubious track record when it comes to providing maintenance for its buildings. That's a public safety concern. If those cisterns malfunction or they're filled with sediment because they're not maintained properly, they will malfunction. They will dump a ton of water where it shouldn't be going, which will flood my home. Okay. They are designed to leach continuously into the soil, if I'm understanding correctly. If I'm not, please correct me. The concern is if there is continuous leaching of water into this soil, it's going to become extremely unstable and waterlogged. Every time there's a rainstorm, trees are falling down back in that area because the water, the ground is so saturated. Trees are falling constantly, all the time. Oh, there's another one. It happens all the time. So, point taken. Per their geotechnical report, which was done on September 14th and submitted December 7th, they did 3 boring holes on this proposed site. In that report, it says groundwater may be present within these soils and could be described as wet or saturated. Groundwater levels are subject to seasonal and weather-related variations. In other words, the ground can exhibit different properties depending on the time of year. We all know that, frost heave, all these kind of things. We have had also, I would like to point out, 3 years. Sorry. We've had 3 years of unprecedented La Nina weather patterns, which means less water and it's warmer. Wetlands and that area, they shrink, grow, contract, depending on how much water there is. So my concern is they're testing ground at a time when we have been at the dry, so they're not getting an accurate sample. In their report, the primary issue associated with these soils, subgrade and softening and general workability if they are allowed to become wet, as well as long-term susceptibility to frost heave and drainage issue. These soils can also be expected to exhibit poor long-term drainage characteristics from their report. We caution from their report that these soils will be highly susceptible to moisture disturbances. That is in the foundation section of that report. With frost heave and moisture disturbances, are they going to build a giant building on it to ground that is susceptible for heaving and cracking foundation? Sure sounds like it to me. Placement of 4 cisterns also around the property that continuously leach the soil into the soil will saturate that ground and will make the entire cistern system at risk. We all know when water gets through soil, things move, things shift. Are they going to be now put out of order or out of alignment or whatever? They're under a giant parking lot. You're going to dig up an entire parking lot to put these things back in order? I highly doubt that's going to happen. So that is a big, big concern. And it also states in their report, the nature and extent of variations between sample points will not become evident until under construction. So they've already found in their report that this ground is not good for drainage. It's susceptible for major frost heave. And they still don't even know what's under there until they start digging. That brings me to the creation of the parking lot. A portion of the parking lot requires an area to be clear-cut of large mature trees and backfilled in order to create that level area. That's that little squiggly line that you see in that parking lot. On the other side of the part of that squiggly line is a 20-foot drop. If you've come to the site, it's a nice steep hill. What happens to that hill when it gets wet? Guess what happens to that ground, to that soil? Guess what it starts doing? Sliding down that hill. You'd remove trees from that hill. You are removing stability from that hill. You are changing the water table because now you are removing trees that are going to absorb that water. Okay. Okay. That by definition is making it unsafe. You're building a parking lot over an area that is not stable, that is susceptible to sliding erosion. So you build it, eventually with the frost heave and the poor drainage, this parking lot is going to slide into the wetlands. That brings me also, my last point, I promise, the state water rules. Water is known as the common enemy. I have water on my property, you have water on your property, it's something that we all have to do with. But there is something called the civil law rule. From this Connecticut DOT drainage manual and other different locations, water runs and ought to run as by its natural law accustomed to run. Thus, as a general rule, any interference with the natural water course to the injury or damage of another will result in liability. That construction is going to shift, change, alter the natural course of water. Okay. That natural course of water, when it is disturbed, guess where it's going to go? In my house. In my neighbor's homes. that hill is going to slide. That ground is already saturated. And you're going to put a 4-story building in an 80, 90, whatever, parking lot on unstable ground. And changing the water table. That is liability. And who's going to pay for all the damages that are going to be done to our homes to accommodate this structure? Is there a guarantee that I'm going to be compensated every single time there's damage? There isn't, and that is a problem, and that is a safety and health concern. Not just me, but also my neighbors. So just leave it with that, is that there is a safety problem. There is harm that will be done. The soil is unstable by their own report that they paid for. To put a building of this magnitude on this type of land, you're asking for problems. You're asking for issues. And that goes to concern and safety for the people who might choose to live there. They deserve better as well. I think I've done enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, order, please.
Hi, my name is Lori Boyko. I live at 15 Oakhurst Road. I don't live anywhere near Hazel Meadow. I wanted to speak to the parking on an aside of what I had written to say. My 25-year-old son lives in Florida. He's on a bus line. There are sidewalks, and there are no snow plowing pile issues down there. And he lives in an apartment that does not have sufficient parking. So when he gets home at 9 o'clock at night from work, he has to go down the street to park and walk home, because otherwise he'd have to just drive his car around the block. It is a very real concern here because we don't have sidewalks, we don't have public transportation, and we don't have a population that readily has available other means of transportation. That being said, I've been in the real estate and mortgage industry in this town for over 25 years. I've worked on selling projects that include affordable housing. All of them gave the buyers the ability to build equity, which this does not. Only a few entities are building wealth here, and that's the developer and anyone he might sell the building to, along with the current property seller, who are hoping to sell for a tidy sum now. I realize we, as residents and citizens of this town, theoretically have limited reasons we can refuse zoning approval for this development or we'll get sued. I almost feel like after the last presentation, I don't even need to give any reasons. That should be enough. But the getting sued is how it works. It works that way due to government overreach. The very existence of government, by the people, for the people, is to protect the rights of individuals in circumstances where two individuals with equal rights under the law conflict with one another, or when a company or corporation is wielding power over individuals, usurping their inalienable rights. That's exactly what's happening here. A developer is using a Connecticut statute that was designed to encourage more affordable housing to wedge a mammoth project that would never be approved in that tiny location were it not for 830G. In so doing, they are infringing on the rights of our neighbors, residents, and citizens right next to that lot in Hazel Meadow, many of whom financially qualify for affordable housing in their own right. Those residents will lose immediate property value the minute that building construction starts. We're not talking about $500,000 homes declining in value by a few $1,000s. We are talking about modest two-bedroom homes losing significant percentages of the value and the home's equity along with it. That is not the right thing to do. It is wrong on every level. It is what government exists to protect. Any damage from fallen trees or flooding that will occur in neighboring homes due to this building redirecting water is just further injury. If I lived there, I'd be finding a lawyer now. The developer is not the only one who can sue. As Jackie and Melissa said, as far as affordable housing goes, I want to point out that this town has quite a lot of affordable housing. Some of it simply doesn't meet the definition laid out by Big Brother because it doesn't have a deed restriction, or people who are currently living in it have incomes that now exceed the state mandated threshold. That doesn't mean Simsbury is unaffordable. I've spent the last 2 weeks helping a mom find housing who is currently living in her car. She is not looking for an affordable apartment in Simsbury. If she were, I could rent her my 2-bedroom house in town for $1,550, or any number of other options. She needs to live in Manchester or that area because she needs to be near her son's school, her work, and a regular bus line that runs hourly. Many of the options there are more expensive and less well-kept than here. There are many factors that go into defining what is affordable, and one size does not fit all. We need to stop repeating a false narrative that Simsbury is unaffordable and unwelcoming and protect our residents from developer deception. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You can come down the center aisle.
I'm Dylan Gagney. I'm from 434 Hot Meadow Street, which is, well, the thing's not up anymore, but it's property just south of the development. And never mind.
You want to plan?
No, it's okay. I just had a few
Quiet, please.
questions. The piece of water directly south, I guess it'd be southwest of the building. I just thought that would be, yeah, where it's going to be still water for a while, most likely. By the dumpsters. I was just thinking that was going to cause a huge mosquito problem right next to my house. That's one concern. And then the distance from my property to the base of the building, I think it's supposed to be 16 feet, which probably may not even be the distance from me to that table right there. That's another concern I had. And the utility noise that's going to, I'm not sure what they're going to do about that, but it's going to be very close to my property most likely. And I don't know if they're hiring a professional property manager to watch over this. I heard something about a citizen involved management. I'm not sure if that's what they're going to do total, or is there any other ways of managing it? And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Order, please.
Hi, Susan Van Cleef, 6 Mallard Circle. That's in Terriffill. So I was going to talk about the parking lot, but I really think what was said, I just want to say that was very, very clear and very, very specific. So I agree about that. I did want to mention some other things about health and safety. I do think having lighting where you didn't have lighting before could affect people's health and safety. And if that parking lot does shine light down into those homes in Hazel Meadow, that could be very uncomfortable, or the front of the building. I know Inland Wetlands has been talking about that in terms of the wildlife there. And noise from cars and deliveries, all of that affects your quality of life. And when you get an excess amount of it, it's not like just having one house built next door. This is 80 apartments that are going to be going in and out all the time, and as we said, possibly deliveries and other things. So I think that should be taken into account also for health and safety. I do want to talk about bicycles. I'm not sure if that's health and safety. I just want to say I think I'm more on the upper end of the age spectrum here, but I spent the first 30 years of my life being a bike commuter most of the time. Getting on a wet bike that doesn't have storage is not fun, particularly in the morning. And I just think building a building on a bike trail in a town where there isn't a lot of public transportation, without storage, good storage for bicycles and snow shovels, possibly a set of skis, snowshoes, those kinds of things. It's just not okay. I was a bike commuter, sometimes having your bike in the hallway, but that's still kind of a mess. So, I just wanted to mention that. I also just want to say something about 830G. I think I may disagree a little bit with some of the people here. 830G is a statewide statute, and what they're asking is that every town do their part. I bought my first house, my first home in Simsbury, with a CHFA loan. That's low income. My next house, I got a little equity. I paid, I'm going to just say $147,000 for it. I think I know something about affordable housing. I wouldn't be standing here in Simsbury. Basically moved here because I liked the woods. And that's where I wanted to live. But we built, and I just brainstormed this, I may have forgotten some. We built Torset Crossing, Kings Ridge, Highcroft, Mill Commons, Mill Pond Crossing, Carson Way, Talcott Ridge, the Simsbury Center Apartments. We're planning Barber Cove, which may have 10% affordable. Castor Bridge Crossing near Dorset has been approved for 72 more units and possibly 72 after that. And I don't know if any of those are deed restricted. And we could have changed that. We could have asked that our developers come in and do deed restriction. That's not the only way to get affordable housing. We know we have other affordable housing in our town, some of which Melissa mentioned. But we could have done that, and we didn't. We could have done our part that way. And I think complaining about big government really isn't the answer here. I think we could have done better planning, and down the road, I hope we do. As for this whole development, it's just way too big, way too massive for this. I understand that just wiping it away and asking the developers to find a better place might be impossible. So I would definitely say do your best to shrink the footprint of this as much as possible if we're going to have it. Also, if you have not walked down there on the bike trail behind this, I hope you do. It takes 5 minutes from the commuter parking lot. I hope you actually go down there and imagine what it's going to be like for the owners before you make your decision. And I really hope that the town starts working on an affordable housing plan that is just not letting developers come in here and tell us what to do. I think we can take a lot more initiative on our end so we don't end up in this situation again. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, hold your applause. Okay.
Good evening. Please forgive my voice. I had 4 hours of oral surgery this morning.
Oh.
So I thought it was still important to come here and speak. I come at this from a very unique perspective, I believe. I live at 446 Hot Meadow Street.
Excuse me, can we have your name and address?
Robert Crivelli, 446 Hot Meadow Street.
Thank you.
I live in this house that's been under discussion all night. I've lived there for 5 years. I wasn't going to talk, but when I heard all the public safety issues are being raised, I have to raise one that I'm incredulous that hasn't been raised at all. The house next door to me has been condemned by Simsbury for 5 years. For 5 years, it's been imploding on itself. It is the definition of a public safety hazard. It's a junkyard. The roof is collapsing. There are chemicals stored on that lot. It's ridiculous. And I hear about parking. So this house is to the south of my house, where I live, where they want to build this apartment complex. It's a perfect spot for a parking lot. It's south. There's no lights going into Hazel Meadow. There's no connection to Hazel Meadow. It's behind. And Simsbury has the ability to condemn this house because this house is going to fall down one of these days, not that far down the road. And I find it incredulous that this is not an issue in this town. It's an eyesore, it's a safety hazard, and it's the solution to your parking problem. I live there. I don't have any interaction with Hazel Meadow. Hazel Meadow is across the drain curtain. Any complex is not going to interfere with Hazel Meadow. It's simply not, and that's disingenuous to say that. But my concern is, you have a solution, and nobody's thinking about it. Nobody's mentioned it. And I think I have a right, as a tenant that's been there for 5 years, to ask you, when are you going to tear down this house? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann McDonald, I'm at 3 Tamarack. I'm in the Hazel Meadow community. I would like to state some stipulations that I think should be done as far as the public and our neighborhood if the development is to go forward. So, my first one is I'd like to follow the guidance of the archaeologists' comments that were written in and allow a Native American archaeological study before the development is started. It is well known that Native Americans frequented the areas here where small streams meet big ones, or they might meet a river. Small streams meet rivers. This property has never been disturbed except for the one home that has been built, and it is highly likely that there are artifacts here. This could be celebrated. This could be a celebrated event for the developer as well as Simsbury. And I think it should be something that should be considered before the development takes place. If you cannot say no and it doesn't get voted down, this should be one of our top priorities. Also, I think the riverfront lot that is 2.39 acres should be donated to the Simsbury Land Trust. I want to ensure that there is no way, shape, or form any development that should ever happen on that property. It should be preserved. Thank you. And also, no more than a 2-story building, please, with maybe 20 apartments with 40 parking places. It's like we're already trying to squeeze the whale into a dolphin wetsuit. We need to be conscious of the areas surrounding the bike path, the traffic, the wetlands next door, the neighbors that live right there. Dylan lives there, the people in front. We need to be conscious of everyone around, not just us and our community, because I'm telling you, thank you, Melissa. Hazel Meadow, we are living the affordable dream. I make $51,000 a year. I am that affordable dream. I am living it. I bought that house because it was the only one I could afford when looking around. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you. If this goes through, before it's even approved, we would like an on-site traffic review done by the state of Connecticut, not some Fusco and O'Neill, a 1 hour in the morning, a 1 hour at night. That's not adequate. One day they did that. 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. We need a week-long study. We need some traffic counts. I did my own little one morning for 2 hours on a day off. I have Wednesdays off. I counted 1,600 cars going by the front of our neighborhood for 2 hours, 7 to 9 in the morning. And I counted 51 of our cars going in and out. And we're not even 80 units. We have 53 homes, and about a dozen of Hazel Meadow ones use our entrance. So we are, more than half of our people are retired. They're not even leaving and coming home. So, like I said, an official study needs to be done, not some private entity that they have hired to be in their favor. So I think it's an important area. It's close to another light, has a blind curve. A lot of people will be going in and out. I think it's an issue. And not only that, you're risking the lives of the tenants themselves. That's a safety issue. If there's not enough time to get in and out, if they're left behind getting in and out, they're having to wait too long, they're just gonna take risk coming in and out. They're gonna have a little impatience going on there. So another item, I would like an 8-foot, and all of us agree, we would like an 8-foot fence on the northern section of the property. A 3-foot fence is not enough. I measured my neighbor's Ford Explorer headlight height. The bottom of his headlights are 33 inches. Even the headlight being a 10-inch headlight, okay, 36-foot fence is not enough. The headlights, anything in a truck, SUV, right over that 3-foot fence, into the wetlands and into the property owners across the wetlands. It's an encroachment. It's mental well-being, encroachment on the life, the habitats that are in the wetlands, all the above. On the other side of that fence, we'd like some spruce trees, some native spruce trees planted to block the view of the fence, because we're going to have the fence up. It's going to have to be 8 foot or more. 3 foot's not going to cut it. If this proposal goes through, we would like to stipulate an 8-foot fence. Also, absolutely no water from this property should be drained onto anyone else's property, whether it be the Hazel Meadow wetland property, whether it be Dylan's property, whether it be the next door neighbor's property in the red house, anywhere. No water should be drained from this property at 446 onto anyone else's property. And I believe that's against the law. I don't want any polluted water coming off that property and down the embankment. They have their drainage set up right at the edge of our border. That is just so wrong. For a developer to be so concerned about having a net zero building, let's put some solar panels on top, we're gonna have EV spaces. They don't give a crap about the wetlands and the habitat that are right there on the edge of their property. And that should be A1 before solar panels or anything else. They have no concern for the river nearby, the watershed that leads to it. I'll also hesitate, this 446 property, if this property doesn't go through, and if anyone is allowed to develop this property, I would like to see, if an opportunity allows, if the development doesn't go through, maybe he could subdivide it and flag lot it, and he could sell the rear piece. Somebody could build a nice single-family home back there, and I bet it would be a prime sale too. Somebody, they'd be right on the bike path right there, right near the river. I think it would be an option for the seller. Anything, if the building goes up, anything that causes noise, like air conditioning compressors, meters, anything, so we need some type of abatement to shield us from those noises. Let's say like Dylan on the other side, his property, all the air compressors will be against the wall that faces him. I don't know how many compressors there's planned, but there's 80 units. I don't know. How many is it going to be? That's a lot of noise. He will never be able to sleep with his windows open. Think about it. You got to listen to that all night long, and not only that, the wildlife around that's usually expected dark and quiet now is just going to be freaking out. I don't know. They're just going to be growing extra legs or something. I don't know. And I was going to ask for the dumpster to be moved to the south side of the parking lot. Thank you. That was done. That was important. The EV stations also. I'm not sure if they make noise or not, or if they cause pollutants, but I would like to see those on the other side of the parking lot as well. Also, the bike path. I think from their plans, they plan to use the bike path as a safety egress for people running out of the building in case there's a fire, and also maybe possibly for a fire truck to come down. I'm kind of quite understanding that, but I'm hoping the fire department really does their due diligence, and if the board members could please, read all that, because what I read the fire department, I don't know. I just like shaking my head. Are you serious? Okay, also, the scientific study that was done on that property, it was done mid-October of 2022. They didn't find any turtles, they didn't find any fish. Of course they're not gonna find any fish. There's no streams on that property. That was just so funny to read that. Oh, we find no sculpin on there. Well, no, there's no streams on it, but there is one nearby that would have those slimy sculpin in there, and that's on the watch list. So I would like the board to recommend and the board to require another scientific study done on that property at 446 Hot Meadow Street, as well as the nearby property, which this property will be affecting. You're going to have, and I know there was a natural runoff from the south to the north. I understand that. And water will take its course. But that water didn't pass through a 95, 94 space parking lot with leaking cars, and it didn't run off of a building that's 15,000 square foot roof. It takes a natural course across the property, across wooded lots, across tree roots, across grass, across tall grasses that aren't mowed, whatever. It takes a natural course. It doesn't come across the parking lot. That parking lot and that building should never, ever, no runoff from those buildings or parking lots should ever be allowed to come into the brook. This is not an application for a shed in someone's backyard. The development of this size is on such a small parcel of land relative to the plans will have detrimental impacts on nearby neighbors and critical wetland and watershed habitats. I just can't understand why this developer is so in tune with having, like I'm going to repeat myself, this net zero building. I will be so environmentally friendly, but yet they're building next to this natural watershed that's so important to the river and just the environment. I don't know. I just don't get it. When I first heard about it, I just like, I just can't wrap my head around it. It's just so weird. I have a couple more things, then I'll be done. And I do agree with the young man about the Foley property. What's going to happen is that house, if it's not torn down, it will become a parking lot. It will become an informal parking lot. For those who can't find parking, they're not going to be willing to drive down the commuter lot and walk down that dark parking lot. They will just start parking there. And it's probably not going to be a safe place for them to be walking in and around that property. I don't know what it's in there. And it's also it's a temptation for, I don't know who's going to be living in this apartment building, but they're outside, they're smoking the joint. Hey, look at that, nobody lives there, let's go in. The floor's rotted, it's been raining in there for 15 years. It is a health risk, hazard risk, it is. It does need to come down, but I'm not asking for more parking spaces. The EV spaces that they're providing, there's 10 of those. They'll be taken all the time because you're going to need those 10 spaces for the parking spaces. So at what point are they going to be used by the people that really want to use them? Because you're going to need those spaces just to park, just in general. So whether you're going to be able, whether people that have EV cars may never even be able to park there to use them because they're going to be occupied by people that just need a space. I already covered that. I'm skipping a lot to your benefit. Also, before when they talked about when the planning board mentioned, oh, what happened to that the generator on top of the building? They said, no, we're not going to have that. Well, it better be a concern that these people never rent to anybody with physical disabilities above the first floor. Because even in a general power outage, they will not be able to use the elevator and get down anywhere. Without that use of the elevator and without a generator being anymore on the roof, and without that, they better be sure they're never going to rent to anybody with physical disabilities above the first floor. Also, on that map there, they plan, can you pull that up for me, please? I just have one thing to point out. Just any plan with the parking lot, and the one you had before would be great. Thanks. They mentioned that they're going to have a little snow storage in the corner of the lot by the bike path. And there was 2 spaces in the far, is there a little pointer? Oh, thank you. There's 2 spaces right here. They're going to have this little snow storage area right here. They said they're going to cone off these spaces here. Am I correct? You're going to use this for a little storage. Right here in the bottom, is this the wheelchair ramp right here? Is that the wheelchair ramp? I want to ask, because I thought I saw on the plans is this is a wheel. I can't read it because I don't really have magnifying glass, but is this a wheelchair ramp? No?
Ken, please,
What is it?
please, this is not an interactive.
Okay, I'm just asking because I couldn't read it, but I thought I read something about a ramp there. So if that's a ramp and that's their snow storage area for that corner, that's going to be, it's not good because even when it melts, it's going to be ice, right? And how can you block your wheelchair ramp with snow in those two spaces they were going to block off? One more thing. The power lines that are behind there. Now, with the four-story building, the people, I'm assuming on the third floor, are going to have a direct view to those power lines. They are high voltage, more so than the ones that are on Hot Meadow Street. I think they run about 23,000 kilovolts or something like that. When tree trimming was coming down that path, they were allowed to trim those trees on the bike path 20 feet left and right to the sky. On Hot Meadow Street, they only trimmed 8 feet left and right and to the sky. That means to tell me that the power lines on the bike path are higher voltage. I don't know about EMFs, whether they cause cancer or not. I think the jury's still out on that. But that third floor apartment or anything on that side of the building are going to be a hard sell. And is it safe for those people to be sleeping within 30 feet, 20 to 30 feet of those power lines? And if there's an electrical storm and one of those gets hit, which they have before, one of those power lines in that area has been hit, I don't know what happens when one of those gets hit and a building is only 20 feet away. I don't know. But it sounds kind of scary to me. And also, if you're planning on fighting a fire, I don't really even know how you're going to reach that side of the building with a 100-foot ladder truck. Are they going to come down the path? Are they going to traverse the power lines with their 100-foot ladder to try to save the people out of their windows on the third and fourth floor? I haven't figured that out yet. I'm not a firefighter. I don't want to tell them how to do their job. They do amazing things. They're, they're all volunteers, so I'll cut them some slack, but I'm still perplexed at how that's going to happen if there is an emergency on that side of the building with the power lines there just 20 to 30 feet away. So, all right, I could go on and on, but I guess I'll give somebody else a turn. So, I've got other things, so anybody else?
Not touch that.
This one.
We'll plug it in here.
Hi, I'm Catherine Godikson, 7 Nutmeg Court. Kelly is a hard act
Sorry,
to follow.
Catherine, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, again,
Name and address?
Catherine Godikson,
Okay,
7 Nutmeg Court.
right.
As I was saying, Kelly is a hard act to follow. She did a great job talking about the water issues. And I'm going to talk about the same thing. So it may be a little redundant, but it's short. So I would like to address the issues of flooding
Excuse me,
frequency.
please, we have quiet back there. Thank you. It's Ferg, you
Anyway.
can't hear.
So, once again, I'm going to address flooding frequency and water containment. That would be a permanent challenge for us as adjacent homeowners. We own to the top of the bank of Second Brook, along which they propose to build their parking lot. The developers covered the parcel with 70% impervious surface, eliminating any absorption of storm water that currently exists. They continue to add storm drains to try to compensate for that because their first effort was woefully inadequate, and we believe it still is, and so is their snow removal plan. They are asking us to trust the new capacity of these storm drains by relying on the best guess of their experts that they've hired. They are not foolproof by any means. I mean, their opinions. If they're wrong, this situation has the potential to be catastrophic for us as our bank becomes unstable. It will be exposed to severe erosion should the chambers fill up and discharge down the bank and into the brook through 2 pipes. And when water is constrained to a narrower space, of course the velocity increases. And the bank is already made of sort of somewhat delicate soil. So that, I believe, will cause a severe amount of erosion. So, and at best, only 50% of the concentrated pollution from the parking lot runoff will be filtered. And as other people have said, dumping water on someone else's property is against the law. We don't benefit from an objective third-party evaluation and are asked to trust their analysis. Vessels is never built on this kind of sensitive location, and their development will incur huge disruption to the entire parcel, which will affect our property. This will include digging to install the underground tanks, clear-cutting, excavating, grading, depositing and/or removing material, and construction. So, Andrew, can you just put up the CREST dates? There's a little snippet of, the last 10 or 12 years of the River Crest statistics. There it is. Yeah, and then it's not a long list. There's a lot more to it than that. But I don't know if you remember 2011. We got so much rain that all 3 bridges were closed. Does anybody remember that? Anybody? Yeah, that was incredible. So the use of the 100-year metric doesn't really work, as you can see. So can you put up the, yeah, there we go. Okay, now these are panoramic photos. I just happened to go down there, and that was 2 years ago. That was the September, I believe, of 2021. And you can see how flooded the Farmington is, and that's our property off of Riverview. And I got down there after it had started to recede, so you can see just how far up it can go. In fact, it was coming up our second bank. That one, the one below, I just took the other day, and the river is actually quite high. Normally, it's a little bit lower than that, so you can see that it's a little bit even more dramatic. So, and I can assure you, if the river was that high, then Second Brook was really backed up. Because as we've said in other meetings, once the river reaches a certain height, which is really only over that first bank, the Second Brook can't go out. It's blocked. So everything slowly backs up until there's 2 huge ponds that the wetlands gets filled up with. So it's dynamic and it's wonderful for the wildlife, but not so much for the homeowners. We also are a little concerned. We suspect that a total of 4 underground chambers will contribute to the instability of our bank by the amount of open space under the parking lot and then having it leach down below them. So the whole system seems just unstable to us. And as Kelly pointed out, the soil integrity is prone to heaving. If they're going to replace all that soil, then they'll have to dig out all the soil next to the top of the bank, then replace it, all without disturbing our bank. I don't see that happening. I don't see how it's feasible. And by the way, they will not be allowed to enter our property to construct any of their building or their parking lots. So I think that will be certainly a challenge for them. So, like I said, the 100-year flood, FEMA doesn't even use that statistic anymore, that metric, because according to FEMA, there's little difference between a 10-year flood elevation and a 100-year elevation. It's not that big. Oh, this is next to Doug Bennett's house, which is, his property is right at the beginning of Second Brook as it comes into our property. And with our last rainstorm, which was not violent at all and not that much water, and it wasn't that windy, those trees just kind of collapsed away from the bank. So you can see that it's not particularly stable. So just to end this, around the globe, Mother Nature is producing more and more extreme weather. You just have to open any website and news website and see that. The international climate scientists just released their report warning that we can expect more and more flooding to occur around. Oh, yes, this is Doug's house, or his, the beginning of the brook. And that was also 2021, I believe, wasn't it, Doug? Yeah. And that is completely swamped as it enters. That board that you see there is like a little bridge that normally is down much further and attached to the land. So you can see that, that's significant flooding. So at any rate, as our planet continues to warm, it has unlocked incredibly immense amounts of fresh water from melting the Arctic, Antarctica, Greenland, and glaciers around the world, to name a few. Most of it evaporates into the atmosphere, and in our planetary system, what goes up must come down. So I hope their experts realize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll be brief. My name is Andrew Sylvain. I'm at 6 Riverview Circle. A couple things I want to bring up is the mobile gas station is right down the street from this proposed development. So obviously the residents there are going to want to go get snacks or other items that they need. So there is no sidewalk, and as you know, Hot Meadow Drive is a very busy road, so that's going to pose a problem there. They do mention the bike path. People want to walk a straight line straight to the mobile gas station. The bike path is not maintained in the wintertime, so that won't be viable. It's also not illuminated at night, so people are going to walk down the street to that gas station there. Okay, the poor gentleman there that lives on the south side, I think it's 434, those mechanicals are going to be right on, basically, if you take a walk on that bike path, it's going to be right next to his property there, and that's just going to really cause a lot of havoc for him. Listen, all those air compressors and everything of that nature there. That abandoned house, that white house there that's been abandoned for 5 years, that's going to pose a couple of problems too. With these apartments, especially at lower rates that they're going to be rented at, single parents are going to want to move in here, even though it might be deeded, only 18 and above. Simsbury's got great schools. So a single parent's going to want to move in. And if you get kids in this community here, they're going to start playing in that house and start going around, and that is definitely a danger. And one, that house should come down, but it's going to be a while. I don't know if the town owns it or it's a tax lien. I'm not really sure. You guys probably know more about it than I do. But that's going to be an issue. And or even, as Ann said, you're going to get some teenagers or young adults. They're going to go in there Halloween. That'd be a perfect Halloween place to hang out. And unfortunately, someone's going to get hurt in there too. The main thing is this sits about 20 feet above our property, especially the residents that do live near Second Brook and Hot Meadow. All that exhaust is going to come down and settle into that property there. So if anyone has asthma or health issues, and not including the residents of 94 parking spots, but also e-commerce. So Amazon, DoorDash, Uber Eats are going to be coming in and out of that park lot. It's going to create a lot of exhaust. So that's an issue that definitely needs to be addressed there. And there is no local bus line. So I know the developer wants to compare it to Glastonbury, which is very similar to West Hartford. People in Simsbury, very few people take public transportation. Or Uber, you have to drive in Simsbury. Yeah, there is that one bus line that goes into to Hartford and everything, but that's not a local commuter line. That's just going to and from Hartford and everything. Again, to reiterate, the bike path is not illuminated. It's not maintained, so it's not a viable option. I know Tucker was talking about bikes, and I have a bike. I use it every now and then on the path. But at nighttime, if you're a young lady, you don't want to be on that bike path at night. It is scary as heck. And again, there's no snow removal on there. And one thing I'd like to do with the zoning commission, I think it's been brought up already, is do their own traffic study. Bring an independent party, come in there, check out the traffic. One of the concerns is I do think parents will move into this complex. So what are the school bus situation? Hot Meadow is a very busy street. Going northbound wouldn't be as too bad. They can pull over, hop right in, but coming southbound. Their previous engineers talked about there is a turn lane at the light going into Stratton Forest, if that's the name. That's gonna be very tempting. You're gonna see the school bus, you're gonna think it's a lane to go around, and that's just an invitation for disaster right there. I feel that's something that needs to be brought up. Okay, so let me go over a couple of things. I'll make sure I got everything, bus stop. Also, too, this property here, there's no room for kids to play. It's just one massive parking lot. And yeah, they can, during the daytime on a Saturday afternoon, run up and down the bike path. That'll be pretty good. But with the school buses coming in, or school buses probably out on the road, but with e-commerce coming in, people coming and going, that's just an invitation for, with kids running around, something's gonna happen there. And that's something that we definitely wanna take a look at there. And that's pretty much what I have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Charlotte Sellinger, Six Meadow Court. Want to talk about traffic. I heard a couple people bring that up, and we talked about it a little bit. So the study that was provided appears to be pretty misleading. The data was calculated using a 2021 manual. Not mistaken. So was that current? I don't think so. It also wasn't done on site, so we think that should be done. I think someone mentioned that. And we think that peak traffic will be much, much higher than was referenced. So we would definitely have concerns about safety. And the bike path, I don't think you can use that after dark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are not going to close the public hearing tonight. So we will have another continued public hearing on the 17th, is it, of April, our next meeting?
17th,
It's going to be April 17th, 7 PM at Eno Hall.
Okay, can we
That's
have a
where we'll
motion
be.
to
There's
continue the
conflicts all
public
over the
hearing?
place in town, and that's where we'll be.
Excuse me. Can I have a motion to continue this public hearing
I will make a motion to continue the hearing.
at Eno
At Eno Hall.
at 7 PM? Second by Ann.
Eno Hall.
Eno Hall, not the library.
Okay, further discussion?
Diane and seconded by Ann.
Yep,
Sorry, she was looking, Mr. Chair.
She has a poll in her way.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carry 6-0. We will have another public hearing on the 17th. Tomorrow is the Inland Wetlands and Conservation Commission. And that meeting they have to make a determination before we can act. So, thank you all for coming tonight and speaking. And you still have time to get home for UConn.
Appreciate that. No worries.
Okay, the next thing is we have a suggestion for a mobile food vendor regulation discussion. This is, staff has proposed some regulations to control where and when food trucks can exist. So anybody want to comment on it?
Are you asking for discussion? Mr.
Yes.
Chairman? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
So I have a question based on our last discussion on this. I didn't see that we stated.
Please, can you exit quietly? Hey, please exit quietly.
In our
want to
last
play this
discussion,
way.
I thought we talked about food trucks and proximity to an existing building. So existing restaurant, brick and mortar, and we didn't want to have an impact. I didn't see that in here, but am I missing it?
It is not in there.
Okay, can we add that?
So I wasn't, it wasn't exactly clear what that intent was, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
So, Jackie, do you mean to say a limitation that would say something like no food truck on a site within X of an existing restaurant?
No, the other way around, that they would be allowed to have one.
Well, existing, no,
No,
if
that's-
the
no.
restaurant has one, I'm actually talking about what he just said, competition.
Oh.
So you can't have a food truck within whatever is an appropriate amount of feet from that.
I think that was resolved with the need for a permit. Because the permit has to have, part of it is to have the signed request by the owner of the property where the thing's gonna sit. So if the owner of the property's running a restaurant there and he doesn't, somebody doesn't, he's not in business with.
Not gonna sign.
Don't sign it.
Right.
No, I think,
Yeah,
I get it,
that-
I think what, it's hard, you can't all see me, I apologize. So I think what Jackie is saying is that if, let's just use, property X, a convenience store, and they want to have a food truck on every Wednesday.
Yep.
Across the street is a brick and mortar restaurant.
Yep.
I think Ms. Bados is suggesting that you consider a limitation that might prohibit that.
Agreed.
So you would say no food truck within 200 feet of an
Yeah.
existing
there should
restaurant.
be a radius for an
So
existing.
my only answer to that would be, I think it would be a legitimate condition that you could consider.
But is a food truck really gonna compete with a restaurant?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, actually.
It is.
I think the restaurants really hate the food trucks because they have no overhead.
Yep.
And they can just turn it around. I'm not necessarily agreeing with Jackie, I would like to think about it, but I do know that
Thanks.
restaurants, yeah. Just saying.
Food trucks are very popular.
But, yeah.
I asked around a couple places because I remember I brought that concern up last time. I asked around, the places I talked to, at least some of the places in Terriffill didn't seem to think it would be an issue because they feel like what they're serving is different enough from what a food truck would be serving. Now, that's an Italian place and a pub. I don't know, maybe if there's other places that might think differently.
There are.
Well, there's always, anybody who's running a restaurant is concerned with anybody.
Yeah.
I don't think our role is to set up monopolies.
No, our role is to protect the existing businesses.
I don't agree with that necessarily.
But if you're a property owner who happens to be in town and within that circle all the way around, you're effectively denying that property owner the ability to have a food truck.
If it's their own, that's something else. If it's their own food truck on their property,
But
we
if
did talk
it's
about that
within
last
two
time.
hundred feet of a restaurant, if you're in town and you're within 200 feet of a restaurant on either side, then that property owner can't have a food truck, period, right?
Is
Right.
200 feet going to make a difference?
Well,
You can't walk 200 feet to go to a food truck instead of the restaurant?
it shouldn't be competing with, and you're being very specific, but if there's a restaurant on one side of Route 10 and there's a food truck exactly across the street from it, you're competing with that restaurant. That pays taxes. That's a brick and mortar.
But you're a property owner that pays taxes too, that wants to have a food truck.
And they can have a food truck, I'm just saying it can't compete with the existing business across the street. So
Why not? I mean, if you had a restaurant across the street,
Because they don't pay taxes.
that's fine. Those two restaurants
Well, they-
compete. They come in knowing that other
yeah,
one is
but
there.
the property owner where the food truck parks has to give permission for that food truck to be there.
I don't know that we have that stipulation.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
So yes, if it's on an individual site, you have to have owner's signature.
Okay?
That's what we're recommending. Yes.
So if we have a parking lot across the street from a restaurant, so what happens to the brick and mortar restaurant?
What happens to the brick and mortar restaurant that's across the street?
Yeah.
Well, nothing. Without the limitation, then the food truck can go on the property across the street.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that we should not have
I don't think we can control that.
I think we can, we're the zoning.
You know, so we
commission.
tried with, and I think in the draft that was sent out, it was 2 hours, I really meant to write 4 hours. We tried with a limitation on kind of an hours of operation limitation. We have seen those, Laura did a bunch of research on this. And so we have seen an attempt at limitations on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis. We have seen some language that said you can have it twice a week, a food truck on your site. So it's not like a permanent item. So that is one way, and an additional way would be to have a separation requirement. I mean, that's not, I think Laura has seen that language in a place or two.
Sorry, can you say what that is, a separation requirement?
So what Jackie is suggesting, would be the separation from another an existing brick and mortar restaurant, for instance.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't care if Talbot Ridge wants to have a food truck come in, there are no other restaurants around, but I care very much. I mean, we're having restaurants go out of business kind of at a good clip right now. And that is the health and the wealth of our downtown. So I do kind of care about having a food truck in our downtown area where we have restaurants going out of business already. You know, we don't need to exacerbate that problem.
Could we consider doing something like in the center zone, we have a limitation about, you know, it can't be a permanent structure? Like
So-
a permanent food
so
truck. It could be
Diane,
like on Fridays
Well,
and
that's
Saturdays.
worse, that's even worse, because permanent, they would pay us taxes.
Yeah, that's true.
So right now, the draft that you have does not allow them at all in center zone.
Oh, okay.
We didn't address center zone. We really started with town-wide regulations. So this is really going to apply to your B1, your B2, your B3, your industrial and professional office district. So we are happy to look at center zone, but we simply opted not to draft it that way, thinking that center zone does have a different aesthetic. It's more urban, it's tighter, there's not as much parking, you know. So for all of those reasons, again, I'm sure we could think a little bit deeper about it, about whether it's truly inappropriate or appropriate for center zone, but we simply chose not to in the draft that you have.
We have food trucks.
Maybe somebody could relate the experience of the Historical Society, who had a food truck
I mean, we
on their
have them
property
for,
not too long ago. I don't see it there anymore. I'm not sure if I don't go by at the right time, but
Oh,
somehow
we have
Plan B survived,
come
and
in.
other places.
Right.
it just-
Yeah, hey, listen, come on. Let's not have everybody talking all at once. Please, Bruce was saying something. There was a food truck on the
The Historical Society.
Historical Society for a while.
They featured this Hispanic dishes or something like that.
I believe that was associated with a short-term special event, which is why they were allowed to have it at that particular
But it was
time.
there for a month or two.
It may have been.
I mean,
It may have been.
in any event, the argument about this, the Fiddler's Green complex, when Doc, whatever his name is, bought it and put all kinds of restaurants in there.
Yeah.
Doc Kaplan, right. And I thought, this is really crazy. He's got Joe Pizza in front, he's got a restaurant upstairs, he's got a bar, pizza place in the back, and then there's another restaurant that went in. And it isn't necessarily true that having competition hurts somebody. It sometimes brings other people in. And so, well,
You're making my point for me.
yeah, those are brick and mortar.
Yes.
But the same thing applies to if you bring in, I don't know what kind of food, and it brings other people in. Some of the restaurants will get people that didn't want to wait in line for a food truck. I mean, they're not real fast.
We're gonna sit down.
Or they want to sit down. So, it's difficult to
It's not difficult
it's
for me.
difficult to regulate.
No, that's her job. And a food truck is mobile. They can go to multiple places, and 4 hours, if somebody's parked somewhere for 4 hours across the street from another, let's use lunch, that is the entire lunch business for that. I think we need to put more value into our businesses, the existing businesses here.
No, Jackie, if the business that brought in the food truck is itself a restaurant, wasn't it already providing competition to its surrounding restaurants.
I mean, Frankie has Frankie has a food truck.
Correct.
And
I don't, I'm sorry, Tucker, I don't, can you explain that a little bit?
So like, let's say Rue has a food truck.
Sure.
And it takes all the business from Joe Pizza that day. Well, Rue is a restaurant, and it's free to kind of serve whatever it likes, right? So I don't know that it's like unfair that they found a good way to do that, right? Because they were already selling food, they were already in competition. I would be much more concerned with a place that doesn't usually sell food, kind of messing up kind of the balance in the center of town. Like if Staples did a food truck, that is not something that those restaurants would, you know.
I think we're more
We're
concerned
used
about
to.
the food trucks that aren't cited, for lack of a better word, in Simsbury, that don't pay property tax to Simsbury. So the food trucks from other towns
Right.
and other places coming in, capturing our business, putting
Sure.
our restaurants out of business. That's what we're worried about.
I agree. No, I hear you there. I wonder if we're not, if you run a restaurant, I don't see that bringing in a food truck necessarily as an unfair like advantage or something that's like it'd be if you changed up your menu, right? That makes sense. It's a place that didn't already sell food. I feel like is the one that is kind of messing with the competition in the area. Am I not making sense there?
You're right, I just think it's about where you put it.
Yeah, I would agree with Melissa, Talcott Mountain Collective, perfect example.
Of course.
If it's okay, and if they get their permit, there's no competition for food there, great.
Right.
That should go to that area.
Sure.
In which case, 4 hours probably isn't enough for there.
right,
And
4
then they
hours
can
is
come-
wrong.
And then they can come to us for longer, then that's fine,
Yeah, but that's the problem. When you start putting down things on paper, then you start finding exceptions or problems or.
That's why we have.
So that's why we're having,
Laura will have to get us
that's
stuff.
why we're having a discussion. So 4 hours doesn't work for Talcott Mountain. 4 hours wouldn't work for the Performing Arts Center.
Whose time?
Can I ask you just a quick question?
Sure.
Have we had a lot of food truck requests in town?
We've had a few requests for food trucks in town. We've definitely had them I've seen them in town. We've kind of lived in this weird time in which food trucks became a very big thing during COVID. There was the whole outdoor dining provisions that kind of gave them a little bit more of a leeway.
Yeah.
That being said, we also have no provision to allow them when they want to be there. So I do have a few business owners who want their permanent food truck on their property. The only hiccup I see with Jackie of what you're saying on a distance separation is also making sure we write in some kind of provision that says, unless it's your business.
Oh, sure. That's,
You
I
know,
mean, that's perfect.
Yeah.
But again,
something.
that's a brick and mortar.
Correct.
And then they're paying for their own food truck. I think that's different.
Or allowing a food truck on their property,
Sure. because
Talcott Collective, they serve food in the
Yes,
bar.
I know that.
So they will be directly competing. Of course, it's in their best interest to bring in food trucks.
They're the ones that bring them in.
If that's what they want, but there are some interesting little hiccups there in different locations. If you want to write a separation distance, it's certainly something that could be. I have seen, can't remember which town it is off the top of my head. I want to say 500 feet was what I saw.
I only saw
That seems accurate.
one town. That doesn't sound like.
It's not in every town. It most certainly is not in every town.
And we might have to do a little bit more research as well to discover that, but no, we haven't. Now, the other thing to remember, I know it is your job to kind of put together a draft ordinance to go to public hearing on. I suspect you will hear from business owners, from folks from the chamber, from folks from Main Street, on both sides of the issue. So I don't know that you need to decide on specific additional language tonight. You are welcome to, and we're happy to continue to work on it. But we haven't set this for public hearing yet, and I think that's, you do have in your Dropbox today, we did get a letter under correspondence from Mr. Antonio about his concerns. You'll see some more of that as we head to public hearing. So, I guess what I would say, we can work on this at your next meeting, for sure. We do, and we would hope that we would set a public hearing date where you'll get a lot more feedback.
George, for Mr. Chair, can we have just a general subject matter public hearing? Or do we have to have a hearing on a specific text draft?
So the answer is that you can have a general subject matter public hearing, but you're gonna have to have another one when you do the text amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what we have done in the past in this kind of thing
Yeah.
is to schedule workshops and invite the public to come in and participate.
We can do that. So we did send the draft to Main Street Partnership, we sent the draft to the Chamber, we sent the draft to the Economic Development Commission. So as at least a starter to get feedback from them.
Yeah, so we could schedule a workshop
Yeah,
with
yeah.
those three organizations, or
Yeah,
anybody,
we
really.
can invite them, sure, we could.
Yeah.
We could do
Yeah, I
that.
like that, Dave.
idea of that.
And maybe, maybe you have a draft that any restaurant within 200 feet, you have to get permission from the restaurant that's within 200 feet to cite something.
That's interesting.
I mean, there's ways around it, but the more complex you make it, the more difficult it becomes. There are schemers everywhere.
Would you like to try to do that on your 17th meeting, or?
I think we're gonna be full on the 17th.
The
understand,
17th
that's
is
why.
going to be a little full. Why don't
So
we
that May 1,
make it May 1, May Day?
But I won't have to deal with it.
okay?
I think it would be helpful to have some guidance on what we should be thinking about food. How much does it cost? And,
Oh, you
you know, if we're gonna be
Hey,
damaging some
come on.
businesses to favor some others, we should be making sure that the town somehow stays sort of where they started. So if somebody's taxes are going down, somebody's gonna need to make up that revenue. What I'm saying is that if we're putting people at great risk, we should be getting great payments for these permits.
Okay.
But I don't know what a great payment is, because I don't know what any other town is charging. But it seems to me, if we feel that we're putting people at great risk, we should be getting a significant revenue stream for that risk.
We will certainly provide that research.
But other towns are ahead of us.
Yeah, we can do that, sure.
Okay, I think it's time to escape.
Hey, can I just ask one thing before we leave? I know, I'm so
Sure.
sorry, I'm like that person. But just really quickly, after all of this conversation for the last couple weeks, it's not like this affordable housing thing is something that we didn't know about, but, is it possible for us to dig a little bit deeper into what we currently have, like specifically?
I have the specific numbers.
Yeah,
Sure.
because I would love to really make sure that we are, because, the woman from Terriffic, whose name I don't recall, she made a very valid point, we shouldn't be kind of catching up, and we all know this, but maybe we can kind of try to get ahead of this as much as possible, and, have a more active, so that as people come to us and want to do development, we make sure that we are including that affordable housing, like, off the bat, or, we start looking to do this affordable housing on a greater scale. I don't know, whatever, I just think we should maybe be talking about it a little bit more, like
Sure.
actually setting aside some time to do that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, we have,
the
the staff does have, the accurate numbers on what,
Maybe I should
five,
talk to
what,
you at some point, George.
five, what 830G allows us to.
I would be
to-
careful about getting too far down the road on this conversation. You've got a
Yeah.
public hearing open, so just be
Okay,
careful.
yeah.
We
Just,
closed it.
no, it's still
No,
open,
no.
it's still
Oh,
open. I
okay.
would just be careful.
Okay.
Asking
Right.
staff for information and
Staff-
That's what we would
you
like.
can
Staff
certainly do
has the
that, but
information.
Okay.
it's not have a
And
debate.
that has been given
Fantastic.
to the applicant.
Okay.
I think Melissa and everybody brought up something that's completely different, which is the naturally occurring stuff, which is ignored by the,
That's fine, that's fine.
Anyway.
I just figured I'd go on record to ask the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn. Second. Oh, I can't, never mind.
Second.
You can't.
Donna?
Who moved?
Second.
Who moved?
Donna.
Donna,
Donna.
okay.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.